I'm Yasmin Gagne.
I'm Josh Christensen.
And this is Most Innovative Companies. On today's episode, author and activist Bill McKibben.
Because if nothing else, Americans, especially of my age, owe an enormous climate debt to the rest of the planet.
Eric Lempel, the head of marketing and PlayStation Network Americas for Sony Interactive Entertainment.
How can we incorporate new types of technology to make the experience more immersive, more realistic, more engaging?
And as always, keeping tabs.
This man crisis is sort of a manufactured moral outrage.
But first, here's the download, the news you need to know this week in the world of business and innovation.
The end may be in sight for the longest government shutdown in history. On Monday, legislation to fund the government passed through the Senate. 8 Democrats decided to vote with Republicans in favor of the agreement. In return, Republicans promised to vote on extending health care subsidies for those receiving insurance through the Affordable Care Act, though nothing is set in stone and seemingly may take place in December. I don't know. That's never going to happen. And on Tuesday, the Supreme Court decided against ordering the Trump administration to fully fund SNAP benefits. The House is expected to vote on the bill that will reopen the federal government this week.
Next up, SoftBank has sold all of its $5.8 billion holdings in chip company Nvidia. By freeing up the cash, SoftBank plans on investing around $30 billion in OpenAI, as well as other big players in the AI space. SoftBank has also announced plans to invest in US-based projects to the tune of $100 billion. Okay, whatever.
At this point, we really need to treat whatever SoftBank says it's going to do or is doing with real heavy skepticism. Not that we haven't been, but
I don't even know if it's skepticism because they do it. I'm just one day I'll understand you.
Yeah, we had a whole conversation with Lionel Barber about Masa and still no closer to understanding Masa-san. Last week, 7 families sued OpenAI, claiming that the tech giant's ChatGPT-4 model lacked essential safeguards that led to harmful outcomes. 3 suits claim the chatbot encouraged harmful delusions in users, some of which resulted in psychiatric hospitalization. 4 suits pin blame on ChatGPT for playing a role in a family member's suicide. The lawsuit also alleged that in an effort to beat Google's Gemini to market, OpenAI rushed through safety testing for its chatbot model.
Major League Baseball will now place a $200 limit on bets for individual pitches and exclude them from parlays. The agreement is with major sportsbook operators like DraftKings, FanDuel, Betr, and others, and represents more than 98% of the betting market in the U.S. The cap comes after 2 pitchers were indicted over the weekend on charges that they threw certain kinds of pitches in exchange for bribes from sports bettors. Go listen to our episode from last week if you want to learn more about that.
You think Masa's into prop bets? Feels up his alley.
Definitely a gambling addict, but I don't know.
No, he's more so for betting on billions of dollars on companies and President Trump for some reason.
Co-working spaces.
Co-working spaces. He's big on co-working space prop bets. AI infrastructure company CoreWeave saw a 13% drop in its shares on Tuesday after its CEO, Mike Intrator, mentioned delays at, quote, a singular data center on the CNBC program Squawk on the Street. Man, the business channels of cable news, the way they name their shows
Squawk Box
is insane to me. Squawk Box, Squawk on the Street, I don't know, Big Stinky Money with Jim Cramer or something else. CNBC's Jim Cramer went on to point out that delays were actually occurring at least 3 places, including data centers in Texas, North Carolina, and Oklahoma. Jim Cramer probably also said to buy CoreWeave before this went down because that seems to be his MO. That guy's hysterical to me. Jim Cramer's wild.
He owns a Mexican restaurant in Carroll Gardens near where we used to live.
Hell yeah.
I was like, what the fuck?
That's amazing. I know there's probably plenty of profiles of Jim Cramer out there over the years. I would read another.
Yep.
If someone at the New Yorker wants to do 10,000 words about Jim Cramer, I will read it. Read every sentence about
Here
it.
for it. Evan Osnos.
Evan, friend of the show, Evan.
Friend of the show, Evan needs to get on this.
Oh, God, that would be amazing. Email him. Tell him for us personally. We would love to see this. Honestly, we should do it for Fast Company. Get Evan Osnos to write for the magazine.
Yeah.
And do a profile of Jim Cramer. These locations he highlighted. Oh, we're talking about data centers, by the way. We're back into this. These locations he highlighted were connected to a company called Core Scientific, which CoreWeave had tried to buy for $9 billion earlier in the year, mostly just for like the SEO purposes, I think, of having Core and Core. Intrader declines to name Core Scientific as the cause for the delays.
And finally, Wikipedia has called on AI developers to proceed responsibly when using data from its website. In a blog post, the online encyclopedia requested that AI companies access content through its paid platforms, Wikimedia Enterprise, as well as ensure that its contributions are properly credited. Guys, we've tried this at our magazine, and I'm pretty sure that shit's not working.
Hey, please go through the proper channels. This is big hall monitor behavior.
Jimmy Wales. I wonder if every blog post starts with the like a personal appeal from Jimmy Wales thing, that was like on the top of every Wikipedia article.
I know. I love it.
Recently, Wikipedia had taken notice of AI bots scraping its website while also trying to avoid detection. The site's anomalously high traffic this past May and June, which it attributed to AI bots. Human page views, on the other hand, have decreased 8% year over year. My ass is still on Wikipedia. Don't worry, Jimmy.
Oh, I love Wikipedia. I'm all over Wikipedia. Big fan of the product. Have you logged on to Grokpedia yet?
No, I'm good.
I can't bring myself to do it.
Life is too short.
Also, this is a Wikipedia house.
This is a Wikipedia house.
And that's the news you need to know today.
So, Josh, you're a gamer, right?
Kind of. I play video games. I don't know if gamers would consider me a gamer because I'm not very good.
Well, what's your favorite?
But I do play video games.
What's your favorite PlayStation game?
Oh, okay. So classic Final Fantasy VII was my favorite game growing up. I like the remake version as well. I always liked playing the Prince of Persia games. Those were good. Big fan of the Jake Gyllenhaal movie.
I was going to bring that up.
No, terrible movie. But recently I've been playing a lot of Fortnite, which
oh yeah, you did
is
mention
embarrassing.
This. Yeah, brutal.
Yeah, it's not great.
That's not a PlayStation game, but it's a game for people.
Well, you can play it through. It's an Epic game, but I play it on PlayStation.
Yeah. It's a game for people younger than you.
Yeah. My nephew plays too, so that's nice.
That's awesome.
He's better than me. He's 11, which is great. What about you? Did you ever play video games at all?
Kind of.
Were you a Wii Sports person?
No, you'd think I was because I am that brand of lame, but
I would picture you getting really into Wii Tennis. Yeah.
Yeah, Wii Tennis. I know. No, it would make sense, but no. I had a PS2.
Solid.
And I played I think we talked about this, the SSX
snowboarding
games.
It's an awesome snowboarding game. I loved that game.
Great snowboarding game. I really never got past level 1, but I did play it a lot.
You never got past level 1 and you played it a lot?
No, I was horrible at it, dude. And I played it all the time. But I would spend like forever picking the outfits or like the customization options and then not that long.
You would love Fortnite. All the skins.
Me spending all my discretionary income on in-game skins.
Yeah.
So the reason we're talking about this is because later on in the episode, we'll be talking to someone from PlayStation. But first, we're going to talk about climate change. Incredible transition from me. Bill McKibben is an author and activist focusing on climate change and other environmental issues. He is a co-founder of the international climate organization 350.org and the founder of Third Act, which organizes people over the age of 60 for climate and racial justice. He came on the show to talk about his book, Here Comes the Sun, in which he argues for the potential of solar and wind power to address the climate crisis and help society. We also talked about Bill Gates' recent about-face on climate change and what the billionaire is getting wrong. Hey, Bill, welcome to the show.
What a pleasure to be with you, yes.
Before we get to your book, I know you wrote a Substack about this recently, but for our readers, Probably one of the bigger pieces of climate news that has come out recently is that Bill Gates recently downgraded climate concerns as an issue of importance. Is he right? What is going on?
It's funny. I've had a checkered relationship with Mr. Gates and climate for some years. I reviewed his last book for the New York Times. He didn't like it, my review, so he complained vociferously in Rolling Stone the next day in a long interview. Look, first thing to understand about Bill Gates is it's not like he's been all over this from the start. As he put it out in his book, it took him till 2006, which was 18 years after Jim Hansen told us that the planet was heating up, for him to conclude that it was actually a real problem and not something that nature was going to solve by itself. Now he's saying, well, let's don't worry any too much about it because we should be working on other things instead. The best interpreter of this letter of his was, of course, the President of the United States, who quite succinctly on Truth Social announced, Bill Gates says climate change is a hoax. It's not quite what he said, but for all intents and purposes, he might as well have. And I'm afraid it's because Mr. Gates' empire at the moment depends, like all the other billionaires, on sucking up to this guy. Even on his face, his declaration is sad and silly. If you were worried about development in the poor world, Gates released his document the same day that Hurricane Melissa hit Jamaica with the highest wind speeds we've ever recorded, 252-mile-an-hour gusts, 600 feet above sea level, the kind of wind speed you can only get when you've dramatically increased the heat content of the ocean by warming the atmosphere. The damage that was done on Jamaica, we don't have a final number yet. We won't for a long time. There's parts of it people still haven't really reached yet, but the insurance industry was estimating that it was between 30% and 250% of Jamaica's annual GDP. So let's transpose that to the United States. That would be at the low end of that estimate, as if Hurricane Katrina, which did $100 billion worth of damage here, had done $9 trillion worth of damage here. The point is, you're not going to have a lot of development in Jamaica anytime soon. At best, you're going to have recovery. The same day that Gates released his report and Hurricane Melissa hit Jamaica, we also had what was probably the largest rainstorm ever recorded on the planet. It was over central Vietnam, a developing part of the world, where 5 feet of rain, almost exactly, fell in the course of 24 hours. So that could be a lot of development in central Vietnam anytime soon. They're going to have to somehow figure out how to feed themselves after this year's crops were washed away. In fact, landmines left over from the war in Southeast Asia washed right back into where people and farmers and things have to do their stuff now. All in all, it's just a way of saying Gates is being silly here, especially because the most important tool that we have for rapid development in the developing world, the quick, rapid adoption of solar energy, is also the thing that would be most useful for dealing with the climate. So I'm very glad that my immense fortune doesn't depend on sucking up to the President of the United States, because it allows one to be a little freer with the truth.
So, despite all those very upsetting statistics or anecdotes you just shared, in the intro to the book, you say that after decades of pessimism, you now see at least some room for optimism in this conversation. Why is that?
Well, because for the 40 years that really climate change has been a live issue, the basic trigonometry of the problem was fossil fuels cheap and renewable energy is expensive. So it's really hard to solve this problem because the same thing that's destroying the planet's climate system is the thing that's driving our economy. We did our best, and we needed to do things to try and raise the price of fossil fuel, carbon pricing, divestment so that their cost of capital would go up, blocking infrastructure so they couldn't consolidate the territorial expansion of the fossil fuel industry. But that was always sailing against the economic wind. About 5 years ago, we crossed some invisible line where it became cheaper to produce energy from the sun and wind and batteries than from burning coal and gas and oil. Just in passing, I'll note that that was the same year that Bill Gates published his last book explaining why there was a huge green premium because it was so expensive to do sun and wind. He managed to miss what was happening. That's a really epochal moment for human civilization. Human beings have been setting things on fire for 700,000 years. Darwin said that language and fire were the two things that set our species apart. But now we don't need the fire anymore. And good, because A, fossil fuel is wrecking the climate system. That's the biggest thing humans have ever done by far. B, fossil fuel combustion kills 9 million people a year directly on this planet, about 1 in 5 deaths, just from breathing those particulates that lodge in your lungs. I mean, there are 5 million school children in New Delhi. 2.5 million of them have irreversible lung damage from breathing the air. And C, as long as we depend on fossil fuel, then we're in the pocket of the people who control the small deposits of these resources around the world. The king of Saudi Arabia, great guy. Vladimir Putin, taken his winnings and launched a land war in Europe in the 21st century, the CEO of Exxon. Instead, we now could and are beginning to turn to the large ball of burning gas 93 million miles above our heads that already gives us light and warmth and via photosynthesis our supper, and is now willing to provide us with great gobs of power if we would just take it up on the offer. And that's the good news of this book. That's what's starting to happen around the world. The last 36 months have seen a huge surge in clean energy, the quickest growth in any energy form we've ever seen. We're getting 1/3 more power from the sun this autumn than we were last autumn on this planet.
Wow.
So we're still in the early stages, but we've hit that steep part of the S-curve, and we've got to keep it going. So that's the possibilities. I'll just add, it has to be fast because climate change is a timed test. Once we've melted the Arctic, nobody has a good plan for freezing it back up again, and we're getting way too close to those kind of tipping points.
When you were working on this book, did you also consider, nuclear energy or natural gas or, you know what I mean? How did you think about that? Sure.
Let's think about all the different things. So natural gas turns out to be just as bad as coal. It produces a lot of CO2 when you burn it, not as much as coal. But on the way to getting it burned, while you're fracking for it, while you're piping it along the continent, while you're shipping it overseas on great tankers, some of it leaks out.
Yep.
Methane molecule, CH4, is 80 times better at trapping heat than a CO2 molecule. So it doesn't take much of a leakage to make it worse than coal, and that's what all the most recent data says. So natural gas, no. Nuclear power, I've got no real problem with. Look, everybody knows what the dangers are, but those dangers are considerably smaller than the dangers of overheating the planet, which we're now seeing, on which we've already been discussing. Maybe someday someone will make nuclear power at a price that allows us to do it with some speed and at some scale. So far, we're not there, and it's hard because nuclear power has to compete with the very inexpensive power that you can get from the sun and the wind, and the speed with which you can build those things. If you want to go build yourself a data center and you need a power supply, nuclear power is going to take you some years to do. The Chinese were building 3 gigawatts of solar panels a day in May. A gigawatt's the rough equivalent of a coal-fired power plant. So they were putting up one of those every 8 hours. This stuff snaps together, man. It's not hard.
I want to talk about that. You call solar and wind the Costco of energy in the book because it's inexpensive and available in bulk. And as you just outlined, you can assemble it really quickly. But walk me through the sort of simple math here. Why is heat energy so inefficient compared to work energy?
Well, think about a car. You put gas in a car and you light it on fire. I mean, that's what the spark plug does. And you've got this series of tiny explosions that, in the cylinders with the pistons. At best, about 30% of that energy actually goes to work moving your car down the road. Mm-hmm. The other 70% is why you have an exhaust pipe. It's because it's basically producing heat that has to be dispersed. Very, very inefficient. So I have solar panels all over my roof, and they connect basically to the EV in my garage. Mm-hmm. That EV has almost no moving parts under the hood, a tenth the ones in an internal combustion engine. And that work energy in that engine is about 80% efficient. About 80% of that power is devoted to moving the car down the road. That's why if you have an EV, even if you attach it to a coal-fired power plant, you're doing way less damage to the environment than driving an internal combustion engine car. But of course, the ideal is to attach it to a solar panel or a wind turbine that doesn't. So, I mean, that's the revolution that's happening here. We can produce electricity cleanly now with the sun and the wind, and we can make use of that electricity to do the things we need to do. So if the holy trinity of electric production is sun, wind, batteries, in your home, the trinity of electricity consumption is EV or e-bike, heat pump instead of furnace, far, far more efficient, quieter, safer, cleaner. And in the kitchen, instead of the open campfire that most of us have, the induction cooktop, available for $60 from Amazon if you shop on Amazon. I'm the cook in my family. I don't pretend to tell you how an induction cooktop works, magnets, but it boils water twice as fast as our gas stove used to. And great chefs around the world are now busily adopting it because it allows for pinpoint control of temperature and so on and so forth. The point is, none of these things represent sacrifice for anyone. Yeah. They're better than the thing that was there before. We talk a lot about the EV. Let's just also, in passing, note what a miracle the e-bike is, because there are actually a lot more people every year buying e-bikes around the world, especially the developing world, than EVs. I mean, a bicycle was good technology to start with, but now there's a bicycle with no hills, and it'll go 5 miles on a penny's worth of electricity. I mean, this is about as good as it's going to get, frankly.
Speaking of the expense of some of these things, I guess I'm curious, actually, first of all, personally, when did you get solar panels put in? And also, how expensive was it at the time? Because in the book, you talk about how it's still kind of expensive in the States compared to other countries.
Other places. Well, when we got them put in, they were really expensive. Yeah. I started putting them up 25 years ago. We've got like 3 generations of our roof is a kind of patchwork of different generations of solar panels. But I figured if I wasn't putting them up, who was going to? Yeah. They work great. As you say, they are more expensive here than they need to be, largely because of excess bureaucracy. That's why they cost 3 times as much in the States as they do in Australia or the EU. Most of the world, if you want solar panel on your roof, you call somebody on Monday and they're there by Friday. They're up there pumping out power. Here, it's a months-long odyssey. We've got 15,000 municipalities. Each has their own building code. They each want to send a team of guys to climb around on your roof and look. All of this is unnecessary. The National Renewable Energies Lab gave us this nifty little tool called the Solar App Plus 2 years ago. A contractor can tap in the address where they're putting up the solar panel and the equipment that they want to put up. And if the computer likes the match, it gives them an instant permit and they get to work up on the roof. So California, Maryland, and now New Jersey have adopted this, which leaves 47 states to go by my rough count. And that's one of the things we're pushing hard to get done at Third Act and elsewhere in the kind of pro-solar movement. When that kind of stuff really takes off, the results are amazing. So, for example, in Australia, they're closing in on 40% of homes with solar panels on the roof. Australia is producing huge amounts of solar power now. On Monday, the government in Australia announced that beginning next year, they have so much solar power in the afternoon that electricity will now be free for all Australians for 3 hours every afternoon.
Wow.
And in that 3 hours, you can set the timer so that your dishwasher runs and your dryer dries your clothes, and you can charge your EV. And if you have a storage battery, you can fill it up with free electricity to power your stuff in the nighttime, and on and on and on. You know, we've talked a lot about affordability and abundance in this country this year. That's what that looks like. You know, that's what abundance looks. Think about that for a minute. I mean, really, I think it's the first time in human history that we've ever been just able to say to people, here's free power. Go make use of it. See what you can do with it. And given what we know about human beings and human creativity, people will think of all kinds of amazing things to do once they have access to that kind of energy. So that's what can happen if you get your ducks in a row here.
Now, you outlined, at the beginning of this interview in the book, it's sort of the premise that we've crossed this invisible line where solar became the cheapest form of energy on Earth. How does this kind of shift the economic argument here? Are you seeing people talking about it in government? Like, what does this?
Well, in the rest of the world, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what's happening across almost the entire world. I mean, look, this work's being pioneered in China. Mm-hmm. They're the ones who are doing 2/3 of the clean energy installation around the world. And as a result, they're now owning things like the world's auto industry. If you think Detroit is the center of automotive excellence on planet Earth, think again. It's 2 or 3 cities in China whose names I find it hard to pronounce, but that are putting out the best and cheapest cars on Earth by a large margin. If we didn't have huge tariff blockades in the way, these are the cars we'd all be driving now too, because there's no beating them. So yeah, that's what the rest of the world is quickly figuring out. And this is especially good for the 80% of human beings who live in countries that have to import fossil fuel. That when poor countries go into balance of payments crises or have to have the IMF come in and structurally adjust their economies and whatever, it's almost always because, at least in part, they've had to pay huge amounts of foreign reserves, US dollars, in order to get the next tanker load full of oil to keep their economy sputtering along. But now they can go spend their money on Chinese solar panels, at which point they're not dependent on China anymore.
Yeah.
They're now dependent on the sun, which heretofore has come up each morning. So it's a transformative kind of thing.
When we talk about the sort of technological race with China right now, a lot of people talk in terms of generative AI. And obviously, generative AI takes an enormous amount of energy to power. To go back to Bill Gates, obviously, I think some of his fortune is tied into that technology succeeding. How do you think about that in the context of this book?
Sure. So let's stipulate for the moment that we don't really know how much of that AI hype is bubble and how much is real. And we're probably going to find out over the next few months. And I have some doubts about it. But if you decided that you absolutely had to build lots of data centers very fast in order to stay ahead of China in this race, the easiest way to build them fast would be to use solar and wind to make this happen. And this is precisely what's not happening right now. At the moment, the Trump administration is all in on building data centers and all out on building cheap energy from the sun and the wind. And the result is you've increased demand, constricted supply, and what do you know? The price is going up. Americans are paying 10% more now for electricity than they did last year, and that's just the beginning. Say you're Microsoft and you want to build a data center and you need power for it. Say you're doing it in Pennsylvania. This team from Rewiring America came up with the numbers to show that the fastest and cheapest way would be to not build anything at all. It would be to go find lots of Pennsylvanians who are now using electric resistance heating, baseboard heating, very inefficient, and just hand them a heat pump and say, use this instead. And that would save so much electricity that you could run the data center on what was left over, and the people with the heat pumps would now be saving lots of money, win-win all around. Instead, Elon Musk has been renting what are essentially jet engines, the dirtiest diesel generators you can possibly imagine, stuffing them into poor neighborhoods of color in Tennessee and running them round the clock in order to power his grok thing that's, seems to be devoted to explaining why apartheid was a great idea. So the whole way that we're doing this is crazy.
Do you think there's a world where this sort of race to get more data centers up will actually help the cause?
If we were smart, we'd be leveraging it to do exactly that. But we're
not.
I mean, I hate to say it, but smart policy does not seem to be distinguishing the U.S. at the moment. A cynical way to look at the AI boom and the Trump administration's involvement with it is, this is one more excuse to try and figure out how to burn more natural gas.
I want to talk a little bit about climate activism. You obviously founded Third Act to organize people over 60. And in the book, you actually say there are two forces slowing the sort of transition to renewables. And those are inertia and vested interest.
Yep.
And I'm curious how climate activism can or should evolve to fight those two things.
So we've talked a little bit about vested interest already, and that's the obvious one. And we have to win some elections and that kind of stuff. It would be a lot easier if we didn't have things like Citizens United that allow the rich to toy with our political system. Inertia is also a big force in human affairs. We do things somewhat slowly. Sometimes for good economic reasons, it's cheaper to, make transitions slowly. Sometimes look, everybody listening to this has a refrigerator. If you clean out the dust from beneath the refrigerator, your refrigerator will be 20% more efficient. But
the worst chore, Bill.
Essentially, no one ever does that, ever, So you have to figure out ways to overcome that inertia to make it easy and exciting to do the right thing.
Now, you founded Third Act to organize people over 60, and this is actually a demographic that typically has a lot of economic and political power, but can also be kind of resistant to change.
Yep.
Why is this demographic so key to changing the conversation around climate activism?
If you look around for who has structural power, it's really a lot of people with hairlines like mine. There are 70 million Americans over the age of 60. Mm-hmm. We punch above our weight politically because we all vote. There's no known way to stop old people from voting. We have lots of connections after a lifetime, lots of skills, and lots of time. And so it was an obvious thing to try. But as you say, many people said this will never work because people become more conservative as they age, more resistant to change, as you put it. I don't know if that was true always, but I think for this generation of old people, not so true.
Interesting.
If you're in your 60s or 70s or 80s now, it means your first act was in this moment of great cultural, political, social transformation that we call the 1960s, the 1970s. So these are the people who were around when we started taking women seriously in public life. They saw the apex of the civil rights movement. They were there for the first Earth Day in 1970 when 20 million Americans, 10% of the then population, marched in the biggest demonstrations in American history. These are people who know that change is possible. We have it in our muscle memory, really, our generational DNA. And so it hasn't really surprised me how successful it's been. We've got about 100,000 people now around the country, great working groups in almost every state. They do incredible work of all kinds, lots of very mundane lobbying, letter writing, all of that. very effective because politicians, as I say, know that these people are going to be at the ballot box. And now, as our democracy begins to flicker and falter, I think it's particularly useful to have older people engaged in this work, because the one thing that young people can't understand about Trump is how completely abnormal he is, how unlike every other president that's come before. But that's what's so striking to those of us who've been around for 15 presidents. There've been plenty that I didn't like, but there were none that I thought there was none of them who were going to put out a video where they get in an airplane and fly across America dumping poop on the heads of Americans. It's like, what is this? This is craziness. And somehow older people are better situated to say that sometimes.
That makes a lot of sense. My last question for you is related to Third Way and some of the arguments in your book, which is, what are some of the big sort of legislative things that you want to see passed?
So at the moment, the things that we can get done are state and local. And those are the kind of things that I've been describing. And we need states and localities doing all that they can. And there's a lot that states can do. And there's a number of states that are doing cap and dividend or cap and invest kind of programs where they take some of the money from fossil fuel and use it to fund renewables. And all of that makes a lot of sense. At the federal level, if sanity ever regains a foothold in Washington, what we needed was what Biden provided. That Inflation Reduction Act was pretty much on the line of where we need to go, subsidizing this transition so that we can get to the place where we have free electricity 3 hours every afternoon, Because if nothing else, Americans, especially of my age, owe an enormous climate debt to the rest of the planet. If you're 70 now, you've been alive to watch more than 80% of all the carbon that humans have ever produced be put into the atmosphere. And, it made your life conspicuously easier. Now it's making everybody, but especially poor people's lives, conspicuously harder. So we've got some work to do.
Before we go, obviously you have the book, Here Comes the Sun. We can find you on Substack. What's it called?
Yes, it's called The Crucial Years, and it's become the largest Substack about climate and energy because it's free.
Yep, I am a subscriber in part.
It's like that electricity in Australia, It turns out that free is a price that people enjoy paying.
Yep.
So,
well, this was great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We're going to take a quick break, followed by my conversation with Eric Lempel of PlayStation. This year, Sony PlayStation has maintained its leadership in the gaming industry with a 12% increase in global sales compared to last year, outpacing Nintendo's 8% and Xbox's 7% growth. The release of the PlayStation 5 and exclusive titles boosted hardware sales, contributing to a record 30 million units sold worldwide. PlayStation Plus subscriptions reached 50 million. I spoke with Eric Lempel, the company's head of marketing, business operations, and consumer experience, to find out how the business got where it is today and what the future of gaming looks like in an AI-dominated world. So, Eric, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I am going to start with a sort of very broad question, but the purpose is just context setting for this whole interview. And the first question is, what are gamers broadly looking for today? And what do you think makes a piece of technology or a game breakthrough at the moment?
That is a very broad question. So I think gamers are always looking for something new. The gaming has been around for decades, and they're looking for something new, something challenging, something innovative. And, with PlayStation, we're in our 30th year, and that's something we always strive to deliver, really use the latest technology to make the gaming experience even better.
Sony PlayStation is competing against Xbox and Switch. How do you all try and differentiate yourself in the market at this point?
Every generation, we plan to go to market in a different way, depending on the current circumstances, current consumer trends. And what we do is we first look at everything we've learned. And fortunately, we've been in the business now 30 years. We've learned a lot. We've seen the good. We've seen the not so good. We take all of that. We go out and we speak to our developers. And we have developers within the company, within our PlayStation studios, as well as a great network of third-party developers, our partners, who have been our partners since the first PlayStation. And we go out and we speak to them. We ask them, what do they want in a console? What will be best for them to tell their stories? What are the things that have been missing to date that would allow them to create even more engaging and immersive games? So that's a big part of what we do. We also talk to consumers. We take all the feedback that we get from consumers, and consumers aren't shy to tell us what they like and what they don't like. And we combine all that together. We also look at the latest technology and see how can we incorporate new types of technology to make the experience more immersive, more realistic, more engaging. So all of these things come together, and then we embark on launching a product. And fortunately, it's been working really well this generation with PlayStation 5. We've put in a lot of new technology, a lot of things for developers to use to make those games even better. And the consumers are responding really well.
How do you think of your positioning in this kind of subscription-heavy market?
We have a subscription service, a membership service called PlayStation Plus, and this gives a wide variety of benefits to PlayStation consumers. They get access to a library of games, and we have 3 tiers, so depending on what tier you're in, you can pick from a lower tier where you'll get less games, a higher tier where you'll get a lot of games, catalog of games streaming in the cloud, games that you can even play off of your PlayStation on another device through the cloud. So we've been at this now. PlayStation Plus just hit its 15th anniversary, and it's going really well. When we enter the market with a product, we have our own plan. We certainly look at what the competition are doing, but we believe we've done well with understanding consumer needs, combining that with innovative technology, and doing something really special. So right now, PlayStation 5 is in its 5th year, and it's doing incredibly well. And we just announced we've sold 80 million PlayStation 5s to date, and consumers are engaging more than they ever have before. We're up to about 123 million monthly active users.
I think we've seen kind of mixed results from tech companies when it comes to VR headsets. I'm thinking of, the Apple Vision Pro 2, but then, Oculus for a while was a really hot thing. How do you think about that technology in Sony's gaming division?
So we've introduced 2 VR products to date, PlayStation VR and PlayStation VR 2. And what we found with those products is that it really does introduce a completely different type of gaming experience. It puts you in the middle of the game like nothing else we've done to date. That said, it's not for everybody. A lot of consumers try it and they love it. And most of the consumers that buy PlayStation VR tell us they really love the product. But for some people, it's not the type of gaming they want.
Why is that? Like, what specific feedback do you get that's like, this isn't for me?
I think being closed off completely from the outside world because, you have headphones on, you've got the headset on, you're completely locked away from anybody and everything. And some people want that, then you can really escape into the game. But others feel like, I want to play for a really long time. I want to sit on my sofa. I'm happy playing on a TV that's 10 feet away. So that's one of the pieces of feedback we got. But it is a great product. What we found is that it's a niche product. And I think for everybody in the market, including the people you mentioned, it's not a mainstream product. But for the people that want to engage with VR, we're happy that we have that product, happy that people seem to really like it.
In terms of, adapting games for it, though, do you basically just say fewer games are going to be available for this because it's, not necessarily your main focus? Or how do you think about that?
It's really up to our developers. It obviously has a smaller user base than a PlayStation 5.
Yeah.
So a developer will have to make a choice whether or not they want to make a VR game. But a lot of them make a decision to have their PlayStation 5 games enabled for PlayStation VR 2. And then that allows them to capture a wider audience. So it's really up to them how they want to design their portfolio.
As digital sales grow, because that seems to be how most people are purchasing games, do you think physical PlayStation games are going to disappear? What do you think is the future of the sort of collectors or small retailers in this space?
Well, the digital games, for all of the right reasons, have become a bigger share of the overall game sales pool. And as you can see, in many other types of media, physical media has disappeared in most cases. Gaming is one of the last places where you can still buy software and put it in a piece of hardware and play it. But right now, we're still supporting games on disc. We're still supporting our retailers all over the world. And, it's a choice for our developers if they want to go digital only, if they want to create a disc and a digital game. But more and more consumers are adopting digital just because it's easy. It might be midnight and you're talking to your friend, and like, have you played this game? And you can just download that game and you can start playing as soon as it downloads.
I guess the second part of my question was, do you think it'll disappear?
Not now. I think we're still in it. We still create a product with a disk drive, so we're very much supporting it. But I think over time, like everything else, things will change, and it's quite possible that you wouldn't be able to get discs for a future product.
Sony acquired studios like Bungie, Insomniac, Bluepoint. Tell me about your acquisition strategy when it comes to those, but just in general too, and also how you think they add to the PlayStation brand.
Sure. So we've worked with so many studios over the years, and in many cases, we work with studios to bring their titles to market as a product from PlayStation, but we don't necessarily own the studio. So over time, we'll look at a lot of these relationships and we'll say, it might make more sense to just bring them into the family. And, Insomniac is a perfect example of that. We made games with them for decades before acquiring them. Our Ratchet and Clank series has been alive and well for a really long time. They made our Marvel Spider-Man game, and then we decided, it would be better to have them part of the PlayStation family. So really the strategy there is about looking at the best talent, looking at companies that continue to push the boundaries with our hardware and make great games for PlayStation fans, and think about, from a business perspective, would it be better for us just to acquire them, and would it be better for them? It might help them manage their companies better. It might help them with funding. It might help them bridge the gap between future products.
How important are exclusives to you? I'm thinking of Spider-Man 2 or God of War Ragnarok.
Exclusives are very important. When consumers think about PlayStation, they don't just think about the box. They don't just think about the games. It's all of these things. And a lot of the games, that you mentioned and many others are synonymous with the PlayStation brand. So it is important that we have a lot of these exclusive games for our consumers so they know when they buy a PlayStation product, they come to expect some of these games will be part of that portfolio within time. Fortunately, over the last 10 years, our exclusive games are really better than they've ever been for our entire existence. We have more popular franchises than ever before, and people are really excited about these games. So it is an important part of our overall strategy.
Now, we just talked about acquisition, but I also want to talk about partnerships with indies or AAA. What makes a good development partner for PlayStation?
A great development partner is someone who's going to do something new, something different, something great that shows off PlayStation products. So we really look to partner with people who are trying to do something very innovative in the space. And it doesn't really matter how big or how small they are. We talk to a lot of people and we have different ways of working with them to help them bring their product to market. And then we can use the entire PlayStation muscle to promote their product and bring it to a wide audience.
How do you compete with, say, if you're talking to an indie studio and, I don't know, Xbox is also talking to them, for instance, like, what is your pitch?
I mean, basically, it's really up to them to do their homework and see, what is the popular console? What are the capabilities of the console? We offer a lot of great technology that the consumer engages with. And, we don't pitch it as technology to the consumer. We just pitch it as a great experience. And a lot of developers have seen this technology. One example is our interface, the DualSense controller. So we've been in this business a long time. From the first PlayStation through PlayStation 4, we had something called the DualShock. And the DualShock, the first DualShock, was introduced after the original PlayStation launched. And it was, a controller that vibrated at times that coincided with what was going on with the game. And we kept improving upon that. So PlayStation 2 had the DualShock 2, PlayStation 3, the DualShock 3, PlayStation 4, the DualShock 4. When we got to PlayStation 5, we learned a lot with PlayStation 4 and we made great enhancements to the DualShock 4. but we had something really special, something different. And that was something now we call the Dual Sense. So we completely changed the name after 25 years because this controller really changes the way you play. It has haptic feedback. It has adaptive triggers. It really makes the user feel what's going on in the game. And that's not something that's going on everywhere else today. And developers love it. Developers take advantage of this in a variety of ways, depending on what their game is. So a lot of what brings people to us is really just the power of the brand and the power and innovation of the console.
That makes sense. So for the past few years, a lot of PlayStation exclusive titles have transitioned over to work on PCs. Why did you decide to do that? And how did you think about that?
Yeah, it's something we thought about very carefully. And, for us, it's experimenting. We're trying to see what would happen if we bring some of these titles to PC. Would it attract a wider audience? Are we bringing a new audience into some of these great franchises? And we've done it recently with a lot of our live service games because those games need people to power the experience. And we thought, well, for live service games, people are playing online with each other and we can broaden the audience a bit and bring more people into these games. So it's something we're playing around with a bit and we've done it and it's been pretty successful.
I'm curious, this is sort of on a macro level, but we've seen inflation, we've seen chip shortages, we've seen tariffs. How has PlayStation navigated all of that over the past few years?
It's actually something we've been dealing with for the last 30 years. The supply chain and manufacturing are really complicated. We have a lot of components that come from a lot of different parts of the world. We manufacture in different parts of the world. And more recently, there's a lot of focus on this because a lot more companies are dealing with this. But we have experienced teams who have managed through these types of situations for years. And, we continue to look at alternative ways of manufacturing our products, shipping our products, things to make it as efficient as possible so we can make the PlayStation as accessible as possible for the widest possible audience.
Now, game development is so expensive. And, some of it rivals sort of the cost of a Hollywood production. How do you think about controlling costs? I'm guessing generative AI plays a big part in that, but tell me more.
So as a business, we're always looking at controlling costs. We want to do what's best. We want to make the best possible experience, but also keep costs under control. And, costs have increased on games because the games are bigger than ever. In the past, if you think back many years ago, decades ago, a soundtrack on a game was a few different tones and a few different beeps.
Yeah.
Now you've got fully scored games by very popular composers. You've got real actors being motion captured into games. You've got incredible environments. So all of this stuff costs something, but it really changes the experience. And the good thing is we've created a lot of these games, which naturally have cost more than some of the games we've created in the past. But we're also selling a lot of these games. The consumer is responding to the experience and seeing how deep and immersive the experience is. And, to answer the next part of your question, when it comes to AI, it's something our teams are using. Some of our development teams are using AI now. We're approaching this, in a very careful and ethical way, but it will make the cost of developing some games more efficient. It'll allow developers to do more. And I think it will play a big role going forward in game development.
What are some of the efficiencies it's creating and what are some of its biggest use cases?
I could speak specifically to, how the developers use it in detail, but I know it allows them to create concepts really fast. It allows them to, fill in environments, even within our products. If you look at something like PlayStation 5 Pro, we're using machine learning in that product to deepen the experience. So it's taking what the developer created and making the experience richer by filling in the backgrounds, by allowing you to kind of see deep into, the sunset, into the horizon. And it's filling in a lot of the information that would normally have to be done manually.
Yeah. So do you think there will just be a need for fewer developers per game or fewer developers in general?
I don't think so. I think what this will allow us to do, we'll be able to enable the developers to do more of what only the developers can do. And in many cases, these are tasks and they're long, kind of laborious tasks. I think it'll free up their time to do better things and make gaming even better.
What are those things that only they can do?
Well, I think they're creating stories. I mean, they're creating these worlds. They're creating the different stages of the games, the narrative of the games. And really, gaming today is much different than it's ever been before. What we really pride ourselves on is having great developers who know how to create great stories and great worlds to tell those stories in. So this is why we're seeing so many of our franchises go from the console to the screen in linear entertainment, because the stories are so rich, they're immersive, they're complicated. And this is the type of stuff that, can only come from really big creative minds.
When you think about your game split and where it's going, do you think PlayStation will invest more in sort of shorter, tightly focused games? Do you think they'll be investing more in sort of big open world epics? Like, where is your focus at the moment?
I mean, right now, something we're really good at is those big narrative epic games. We also have a live service game, Helldivers 2, which is doing incredibly well right now. So we'll continue to play to our strengths. But what's great about our studios is that they're always thinking about what's next. They're always thinking about a way to do something different. And a lot of the studios that have been part of the PlayStation Studios family for a long time, started down a path doing one thing really well and then completely pivoted to something else and found great success doing those things. So I think it's just really all about getting the right type of creatives with the right experience and letting them, design on this great canvas we call PlayStation.
In terms of consumer spend, are you seeing gamers buying fewer games and spending more on sort of the ecosystem of those games? Are you seeing them buy more games? Like, what are purchasing trends at the moment?
It's really a mix. So it depends on the gamer. And the nice thing is we have a broad set of consumers now who do different things. So what we are seeing on PlayStation 5 compared to PlayStation 4 is that people are playing more games. They're more diverse in their tastes, and they're willing to play more games, about 50% more games than they did on PlayStation 4, which is great. But you do have some consumers who stick to a specific game and keep engaging with that game and buy new things for that game. And then others who will kind of go game by game. They'll play a game, they'll play it for a while, they'll engage, and then they'll move on to something else. So it is kind of a mix.
That makes sense. In terms of PlayStation's kind of long-term growth strategy, what does it look like? Is it more acquisitions? Is it platform expansion? Is it finding a way to engage more deeply with players? How do you see this over the next 2 to 5 years?
Yeah, over the next 2 to 5 years, it's definitely about continuing to engage with the player base that we have, because it's a very healthy player base, continuing to ensure they understand what they can experience on PlayStation, the value they get from PlayStation, because as I mentioned, for some consumers, in a few weeks from now, they will have owned their PlayStation 5 for 5 years, and they're very happily using it, but we want to keep them engaged while at the same time expanding, bringing people into PlayStation 5 who haven't bought a PlayStation 5 yet. And it's been 5 years. So, we want to understand what's been holding them back. In many cases, it's the game they want hasn't come to PlayStation 5 yet. But, as we look to the year ahead, there are great games coming. We recently announced that our Wolverine title, made by Insomniac, the same company that made Marvel Spider-Man, will be released next year. And we've got to acknowledge that Grand Theft Auto 6, likely one of the biggest titles of the platform age of the decade, will launch next May. And that's from, our partners at Rockstar. So we're very excited about that. So it's for some consumers, they have to wait for that experience. It has to be the thing they want to play. For others, they're coming in on the idea that they know there's a few things now and they know what's coming and have the promise of other things in the future, and they jump in early.
Are you seeing generational differences in terms of consumers or how they play?
So the good thing is the gaming audience has expanded, and where it might have used to been a small set of consumers within a certain age bracket, the age brackets are pushing up and down in both directions. So we're seeing gamers who have been gamers for a really long time get older, but stick with it and continue to enjoy gaming in their free time as a form of entertainment. And then we're seeing younger audiences come in. So the good thing is we've got a variety of content. So, some gamers are aging into PlayStation Now who are younger than they were ever before. And we've got a variety of games to do that. One example, last year we released a game called Astrobot, and it's a PlayStation IP. It uses that DualSense controller like nothing ever has before. And everybody loves it.
Mm-hmm.
The hardcore gamers love it because it's a really well-designed game that uses the hardware really well. New to gaming people love it because it's accessible. They can pick it up, they can play. You can really tailor the experience to how deep you want to go. And that's also helped us bring in a younger audience. The other thing we're seeing is parents are introducing gaming to their kids because they grew up with gaming and now they have children. They're saying, here, let's do this together.
You've been competing with Xbox and Nintendo for a long time, but do you get worried about these sort of bigger LLM competitors being able to eventually make games like yours potentially at a fraction of the cost?
So right now, we kind of see it as something great that more and more people are getting into gaming, especially if they do it right. If these are companies that have creativity, have developers with a story to tell, it only pushes us all to try to one-up each other and do something better. So we really want the gaming category to grow. So at this point in time, not really worried about that, not really worried about these players as competition, but really look at it as it's going to bring more people to gaming. And then those people can eventually make a decision on where they think the best gaming is. And, we're pretty confident with PlayStation that we're offering an incredible gaming experience.
Do you have any partnerships going with any LLMs?
Nothing that I can speak of right now.
Well, that sounds like a yes. I guess my last question, this is a personal one, is what do you play?
So the good thing is I am a gamer. I've been a gamer a long time, since the 1970s. I was working in gaming before PlayStation existed. So, I'm thrilled to be able to get to do what I do and work with incredible people at PlayStation all the time. I play a little bit of everything. I mean, it might sound a bit cliche, but I really do like the types of games we make. So some of my favorite games are the games that come from PlayStation, like Marvel Spider-Man, like God of War. Right now, I'm playing Ghost of Yotei when I have time, which is a game we released from Sucker Punch just a couple of weeks ago. But my taste is pretty diverse. I mean, I'll play very small games, on our platform and others that are just interesting and trying to do something new in the category. So, my tastes are really diverse.
Well, this was great, Eric. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Of course. Thanks for having me. It was great chatting with you.
Okay, we're back. I mean, it's just me and Josh today, but we're going to wrap up the show with keeping tabs.
Bill McKibben's here for keeping tabs. Honestly, we should have had him do it. He would have a great keeping tabs.
We should have done it, yeah.
He's delightful. I love
was
that
such
man.
a fan. Such a fun interview. Anyway, this is where just me and Josh share a story trend or piece of pop culture we're following right now. And Josh, since you're the only other person I'm talking to in this segment, what are you keeping tabs on?
You see, we have scripts that we try to keep consistent from episode to episode. And so when we break format like this and don't have a guest, it just throws us for a loop because we're not very smart.
We can't read.
We can't
we're
read.
Not very smart.
Just a couple of Leah Michelles trying to get it through a podcast. So I'm keeping tabs on something, I guess, semi-serious. So I'm keeping tabs on the man crisis, Yas.
Oh my God.
So Jessica Winter in The New Yorker over the weekend wrote an article for their weekend essay. I have to read the title because I think it's a great title. What Did Men Do to Deserve This? Which is a great title. And basically she's talking kind of about how this man crisis is sort of a manufactured moral outrage and is really focusing on Scott Galloway, which I've always said were sort of like the millennial Scott Galloway and Kara Swisher.
Totally.
You and I, that's totally our vibes. I probably shouldn't say this since I'm in the podcast industry, but I just can't stand Scott Galloway.
It's not my bag.
It's just not for me. It's not even I haven't even dove that deep into all of his opinions and thoughts, and I'm sure he's a plenty smart person. But what I have heard of him, he just is grating to me. It's just a sonic thing more than anything.
I get it.
But anyways, this essay kind of goes through his book, which is sort of talking about creating like an aspirational model for men to follow and counterpoint to like the right-wing manosphere, which we've talked quite a bit about. It's a really good essay.
Yeah.
I personally am tired of hearing about like the man problem and like what's wrong with the boys, because it just feels dumb to me, or like not actually anything new. Like, oh, you mean young people are...
You guys have always sucked.
No, but also it's just
Sorry.
like, it's not even necessarily particularly like gender. It's like...
But yes, no, I agree. There's always an angry young man, bogeyman for every generation.
Always something like that. And it's also like, oh, you mean that young people, teens and young adults are struggling to find their identity? Wow, that's something new?
Yeah.
But I'm sort of more interested in like the masculinity grifters like Galloway and the people selling books and airplane reads for all of this stuff around the man crisis, or selling supplements, or we've talked about it with like the Manosphere podcast out there, because it's just so stupid. It's just so like nakedly like, men need to be men, and these are the models we should look to.
Well, but like the lib version is also terrible, where it's like how to raise a good man.
Yeah, that's the Scott Galloway thing, and it's
Yeah,
either
exactly.
like it's either wholly infantilizing,
Both sides are bad.
or like
Yeah.
Jessica talks about this in like what Scott Galloway's models that he keeps pointing to for men, and it's like mid-century, like people who built the Empire State Building and served in World War II. And I was like, one, lots of people died building the Empire State Building. Also was during the Great Depression, so it was sort of like compulsory.
Yeah.
And also service in World War II, compulsory. You were drafted. So I don't know if these are the models we should be looking to. I don't have a good model. I just think it's stupid. Like, let's stop talking about this. I hate it. I hate it so much. Yas, what are you keeping tabs on?
I don't know if we kept this on air last episode, but I did mention that I reached the end of TV recently and started watching Love Island Australia.
No, I don't think we kept that in.
Okay, well, let me tell you, Love Island Australia, what the fuck is going on in that country? Every Love Island,
Jesus.
like the people on the show will self-admit that they are stupid,
Yeah.
you know?
That's sort of like the shtick and the charm of it.
It's like the thing, yeah. But I have never seen a more dumb group of people. My God, hearing somebody try and explain where Europe is on a map and where South America is on a map for 15 minutes and failing is crazy.
Oh my God.
I don't know what is going on in that country. I feel like their school system might be broken. But it's actually insane. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it, where I'm just like, you guys are brain damaged. Like,
Maybe they just have better and more sociopathic casting directors who are like, we're going to get the most ridiculous people.
I was listening to a Ringer reality TV podcast, and they made the point, which is certainly true in The Bachelor, which is that contestants on the show in The Bachelor are far more conservative than The Bachelor's audience.
Yeah.
And sometimes it leads to some like weird, just like internet activity as a result.
Yeah.
And apparently that is like extremely the case with Love Island Australia somehow.
Oh,
This
really?
is not me saying conservatives are dumb. What I am saying is Australia culturally is very foreign to me, and I don't really understand what's going on.
Yeah, that is a weird thing. There's been a lot of commentary around that in this season of Love is Blind, of like the weird pool of people they got in Denver, Colorado.
Super conservative group of people.
But conservative in like a weird way. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like...
Well, because they were conservative and they all seemed like sociopaths. Like it was just like a weird like...
Yeah, it was like conservative instinctually, but not paying attention to politics at all.
Yep.
You know what I mean? That's the vibe that I got from these people.
Hot take, everyone hated this last season of Love is Blind in Denver because I'm fine with saying this, no one got married. It was like...
Yeah, no one got married.
Kind of a disaster. But I actually really liked it because I felt like they found some true freaks.
I liked it too. Here's the thing, and I'll say this, and it's going to make me sound bad. I don't care about true love.
No. neither.
I don't care about those people getting together at the end.
I want some weirdos. I want to see some weirdos on TV.
I want to see some weirdos actively convince themselves to fall in love with someone in 10 days.
Sabotage their whole life.
This is the thing. I don't think this experiment proves if love is blind or not. I think it's insane.
It's not an experiment. We know that shit doesn't work.
We know that shit doesn't work. I don't think it matters if you see them or not. It's 10 days that it takes them to get engaged.
And this past season, the train wreck of the pods with that girl Casey and Patrick or whatever.
The girl Casey and Patrick, that was a mess. And there's also one of the Allie and Anton couple.
Oh my God.
Allie is, and I don't want to say this, I'm going to sound really crass here, one of the most attractive people I've ever seen on TV.
She puts on a baby voice every time she talks, which is like...
Yeah. And like, I watched her, I was just like, like in the pods and like how she got there with Anton, I was just like, yo, something's wrong here.
Yeah.
Something's seriously wrong. You are way too attractive to be here.
Yeah, you must be damaged a lot.
But it's like not in the way that like that girl Casey seemed like she just wanted to be on reality TV show. Like,
yeah, she just kind of seemed like a bad person.
Yeah, the girl Allie.
Although I think Patrick was terrible in his own way.
I think Patrick was worse. Hot take, I think Patrick was the worst part of that equation.
I've gone back and forth on this, but yes.
Yeah. Anyways, Love Island Australia, crazy.
Love Island Australia, just incomprehensible to me as a show.
The whole thing is an island. See, that's the thing.
If you can tell me what the hell's going on in Australia, I like don't want to go there anymore. I'm like, we're going to New Zealand. We'll never make a pit stop in Australia.
But you know, the people in New Zealand are the people who Australians are like, these crazy fuckers over there, which I guess could cut two ways.
Flight of the Conchords, good. Love Island Australia, horrible.
These are the movie Australia with Nicole Kidman and Hugh Jackman. Crazy.
Also bad. You know, didn't they try and make a TV show out of like outtakes from that movie?
Taika Waititi?
Okay, he's getting old.
I think they did, yeah.
Taika's getting old.
Taika Waititi is getting a bit old, but I still love What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah, What We Do in the Shadows, the Pirates one, not that good.
No, not that good.
Because he keeps doing the same like fish out of water thing or like mismatched thing, and after a while you're like, pick another thing.
Yeah, it's a little, the shtick gets old, which is fine. You know what I mean? Like, to have a really good shtick and make one or two things that are really amazing.
Great.
Is awesome. It's great. It's when we expect these people to be like prolific always, and that's just not a thing.
Yeah.
Which is why you shouldn't watch Love Island Australia.
And that's it for Most Innovative Companies. Josh, thank you for being on the
We can't read. Everyone, we can't read. Just go to the credits.
Our show is produced by Sam Gebauer, Hawa Atori, and Blake Odom. Editing by Matt Toder, mix and sound design by Tad Wadhams and Nicholas Torres, and our executive producer is Josh Christensen.
Somehow. Why? This does not bode well for this podcast.
Remember again to subscribe, rate, and review, and we'll see you next week.
This really went off the rails.